guys, it's Miss Theresa here. Today I wanted to talk to you about our English unit, and as you know, we have been talking about writing recounts, and we've also been looking at the book Who Pushed Humpty Dumpty. Let's think back to the beginning of term 1 when we first met this guy here. Does anybody remember his name? Maybe not. His name is Binky, and he is the cop, and he is part of the Pine Cone Division. Remember, he goes along and he solves all the cases in the Pine Cone Forest. We spoke about Goldilocks and the clues that he found so that he was able to solve that case. And what happened to Goldilocks? Yep. After going through all the bear's things, she ended up in jail. We also spoke about Hansel and Gretel and how he solved that case. And he ended up finding the children, and it was case closed. All right. Today, I would like to talk to you about Snow White. Let's find out how Officer Binky solves this case. Snow White, the queen visiting the forest. For everyone else, this might be a thrill. For me, Officer Binky, a veteran cop, it was just another day on the job. I knew her the moment I saw her. I think it was the crown. She was coming to judge the annual Forest Beauty Pageant. They say I'm the fairest in all the land, she announced to the press guys. So who better to judge a beauty contest? The pageant would have the usual contestants, Elsie the cow, Henrietta the pig, and that sweet girl who cleaned for the 7 dwarfs. I think they called her Snowflake. No, Snow White. I saw Snow White once. Boy, what a knockout. Better looking than any queen I ever saw. I figured she was going to win first prize and that new refrigerator. I kept wondering though, why was the queen always talking to that big mirror she carried around, especially since she always seemed to be yelling at it. It brought out the cop in me, and I decided to follow her. Imagine my surprise when I saw her dash into the old costume shop. When I caught up with her later, the queen sure didn't look like herself. Of course I'm in disguise, she explained. If people know I'm the queen, they always ask me silly things, like, do you know Cinderella? And is she really as nice as she seems on TV? What's with the fruit? I asked. Why, it's just a gift for that sweet Snow White, she replied. I let her go, but the cop in me was still suspicious. Do you think Officer Binky should have been suspicious about the Queen? Let's find out. The morning of the beauty pageant arrived and Snow White was nowhere to be found. Then a 911 call came in. It was from one of the 7 dwarfs, Dopey. I didn't even know he could use a phone. Snow White is asleep and we can't wake her up. I think something terrible has happened, he cried. I got to the dwarfs just as they were wheeling the poor girl into the ambulance. Inside the house, the first thing I saw was an apple core by the bed. I sent it to the boys down at the crime lab. Nobody looked more shocked than the Queen as Snow White arrived for the Forest Beauty Pageant that night. When I asked Snow White about her quick recovery, she said, "My doctor was such a prince. I felt better the minute he touched me. In fact, we're engaged." Later, the boys at the lab handed me their results. It was the Queen, all right. Poisoned apples. I should have guessed. While I put the cuffs on the Queen, she blamed the whole thing on the mirror. He kept telling me I wasn't the fairest in all the land. He said Snow White was. I had to do it. Don't you understand? I had to. Honey, looking at you right now, I think the mirror got that one right. Case closed. Thanks, guys.
We are learning to identify the purpose of a recount text and its features. This is because we need to understand that we can engage with a variety of texts for fun. We need to be able to create text for different audiences that show we understand how words, images, and detail can be used to explain our ideas. So what I'm looking for is you to be able to identify the purpose of a recount text and identify that a recount text retells an experience or an event from the past. This is the word text. What's the word? Text is words of something written. This is the word recount. What's the word? Recount retells an experience or an event that has happened in the past. This is the word title. What's the word? The title is to gain the reader's attention so that they want to read your text. This gives an idea of what the recount is about. This is the word orientation. What's the word? Orientation is like an introduction, so it tells who was involved, what happened, where the events took place, and when it happened. This is the word when. What's the word? When is a time. So yesterday, today, tomorrow, on the weekend, or on the holidays. This is the word who. What's the word? Who is a person. So mum, dad, brother, sister, family. This is the word where. What's the word? Where is a place, pool, shop, at the park, home, movies. This is the word what. What's the word? What is a thing or an action? So going swimming, sleepover, shopping. This is the word why. What's the word? So why is a reason. Birthday, bored, catch up, had to practice. This is the word sentence. What's the word? Sentence is a set of words that starts with a capital letter and ends with a full stop. This is the word first. What's the word? So first is coming before all others in the order. So really it's about what happened at the start. This is the word then. What's the word? So then is after that. So what happened after that first event? This is the word next. What's the word? So next means coming immediately after the previous event. So first, then, next. This is the word finally. What's the word? So finally is the last in a series of events.
Hi guys, it's Miss Theresa and Miss Kylie here today, and we're going to talk about writing a recount. As you know, we've been looking at the book Who Pushed Humpty Dumpty. I have also read you the story Snow White. So today we're going to have a go at writing a recount about the story Snow White. So the first thing we need to do is have a look at our superb sentence starters. And we're going to talk about, when, who, where, what, and why happened in our story. Just going to change over sides. So let's have a look at when. When we read the story, it tells us that it happened during the day. So I'm going to write during the day because there isn't a specific time. So during the day. Who was the story about? Her name was, that's right, Snow White. Where did our story take place? In the pinecone forest. So pinecone is the name, we can put a capital letter. In the pinecone forest. What was happening in our story? It was a beauty pageant. Okay, and pageant might be a word that we don't know or we haven't heard before. Another word for pageant is a contest. So it was a beauty contest. Or you could say a beauty competition. Why? Why were they having a beauty contest? They were having a beauty contest to see who was the prettiest in the land. Okay? To see who was the prettiest in Okay, so there you go. We've written our superb sentence starters. When, it was during the day. Who, Snow White. Where, the pinecone forest. What, it's a beauty contest. And why, to see who was the prettiest in the land. Now we're going to take this information and transfer it into our recount.
Hi guys, so you've just finished filling in the superb sentence starter with Miss Theresa. So now we're going to fill in our orientation. But firstly, we need to add the title. So the title of the story is Snow White. So I'm going to write Snow White in the title section. So now we're going to take the information from the superb sentence starter and create 1 or 2 sentences for our orientation. So firstly, we're going to write during the day, so when it has occurred, during the day. Who are we talking about? We are talking about Snow White. So during the day, Snow White. Okay, where was Snow White? Snow White was at the pinecone forest. Okay, so what was Snow White doing? So Snow White was entering a beauty contest. Why was she entering the beauty contest? To see who is the prettiest in the land. So, Snow White was entering a beauty contest to see who was the prettiest in Okay, so the orientation is during the day, Snow White was at the Pinecone Forest. Snow White was entering a beauty contest to see who was the prettiest in the land. So we have capital letters at the start of our sentences, full stops at the end, and some finger spaces in between so that we know that they're words.
Okay guys, so you have just finished writing your orientation with Miss Kylie. Now it's time for us to move on to the events. This is the middle part of our recount, and this is where we talk about first, then, next, and finally. So let's just remember, we're talking about Snow White. She's in the Pinecone Forest and she has entered a beauty contest or a beauty competition. Let's find out what else happens in our story. First, I'm going to put a circle around it so we can all see it. First, the Queen came to the forest, okay? And then the Queen put on a disguise. What do you think disguise means? That's right, like a costume or something to make her look different. She did this so no one would recognize her. Then the Queen put on a disguise. Next, what happened next? The dwarves called Officer Binky to say Snow White was asleep. So the Queen had put on her disguise and the dwarves called Officer Binky to say Snow White was asleep. And finally, the doctor saved Snow White and the Queen was arrested. Okay, so finally the doctor saved Snow White and the Queen was arrested. Let's remember again, when we're writing our recounts, we need to have a capital letter at the beginning of our sentences, or also when we're writing somebody's name. So Snow White needs to have capital letters because that is her name. We also need to have full stops at the end and spaces between our words. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so now we're on the final section of our recount. And in this section we talk about the conclusion. So in the conclusion we discuss our favourite part and feelings. So my favourite part was the Queen being arrested for poisoning the apple. The Queen was mad because Snow White was the prettiest in the land. So you can see here that the feelings word that we used was mad. Okay, so now you guys can go and have a go at writing your own recount.